Francesco Castiglia was born on February 10, 1891. Francesco was the youngest of Luigi and Maria Castiglia's 6 children. He lived with his family in this house.
He always dreamt of the water that he drank in Italy, and drinking from the wells, and hearing the church bells ring. And that was part of him. That was just part of his makeup.
In 1895, Francesco took his mother's hand and crammed onto a passenger ship bound for New York, leaving a sister behind with relatives. He was 4 years old.
They kept him in that large pot that they cooked in all the way over on the boat. I mean, I'm sure they let him out to run around once or twice, but that was basically where he stayed.
The family settled in the East Harlem section of New York, a slum bursting with newly arrived Italian immigrants. Francesco's father struggled to run a small neighborhood grocery store. The boy came to despise his father for accepting their filthy conditions. He would wander the streets for hours, yearning to escape the family's poverty.
Costello always admitted that what he wanted was wealth and power and respectability, and I think you have to attribute that to some extent to the idea that he was always trying to escape that East Harlem ghetto.
Crime was the easiest and, as the young man later saw it, the only ticket out. He dropped out of the 5th grade, joined a street gang, and began robbing people. In his new profession, Francesco Castiglia adopted several aliases. One would eventually stick: Frank Costello, an Irish version of his name.
You could see that he was a very sullen, tough kid. And there really was no marked difference between the man who became known as the Prime Minister of the underworld and others. He was just another hoodlum kid.
A perfect candidate to collect rents for a local don. On one of his rounds, an aging beauty who was behind on her rent offered the 15-year-old something else in payment.
Costello wasn't willing to give up 2 months' salary for that, you know. So she started feeding him wine. And he says, as he was drinking the wine, her hair became longer and silkier, longer and silkier.
Costello lost his virginity, then failed to turn in the rent money. His boss beat him up, a painful lesson that became a metaphor in Frank's future business dealings.
He would send out a message after talking to the guy. He says, oh, her hair is getting longer and silkier. And everyone would know what it means. That, you know, I'm not going to go near this proposition if the world came to an end.
Several years later, when Costello was 23 years old, a friend introduced Frank to Loretta Geigerman. Bobby, as her friends called her, was a pretty brunette, outgoing and Jewish. She and Frank, a Catholic, fell in love. After a courtship of several months, on September 23, 1914, an Episcopal minister from St. Michael's Church married the couple in the Chapel of the Angels. Bobby was only 15 at the time. The honeymoon ended several months later when police arrested Frank for packing this gun. The judge sentenced him to a year in prison. It was a sobering experience for Costello. He vowed never to carry a pistol again. He would make his way through life by his brains, not by a gun. Just after World War I, Costello hit on his first business scheme, a toy novelty known as a punch board. It was a craze sweeping New York at the time.
You just take a little needle and punch out a little piece of paper, and if you opened up the piece of paper and it said, sorry you lost, it was too bad. If it said you won 25 cents, whoever gave you the punch bowl would have to give you the 25 cents.
Costello and a partner not only made the punch boards, but also the Cupid dolls that went as prizes. Within a year, they had earned $100,000. Then they tucked away their earnings and declared bankruptcy, bilking creditors for $14,000. Costello learned how to capitalize on more gambling schemes from a master, Arnold the Brain Rothstein. Rothstein ran a bookmaking empire and was New York's most powerful racketeer. The Brain protected his gambling empire through Tammany Hall, the democratic machine that controlled New York City government. Tammany Hall leaders decided who was made a district attorney, a police precinct captain, or a judge. Costello learned from Rothstein how to use money, not threats, to buy them all. Knowledge that came in handy when Prohibition took effect on January 16, 1920. Rothstein backed the bootlegging operations of Costello as well as those of several other young Turks. One was a savvy Italian kid from New York's Lower East Side named Charles Luciano. From the same neighborhood came two Jewish thugs, Meyer Lansky and Benjamin Siegel. But one of Luciano's close associates, Vito Genovese, was suspicious of all non-Italians and resented these Jewish colleagues. Vito once complained in front of Siegel and Lansky, "What are you trying to do? Load us with a bunch of Hebes?" Before Bugsy could flash his trademark temper, Costello stepped in. "Take it easy, Don Vitone. You're nothing but a foreigner yourself." Genovese did not say another word. Costello emerged as a bootlegging innovator. He was the first to use seaplanes to protect his liquor shipments from hijackers. And he was a shrewd organizer. From his headquarters at Lexington Avenue, Frank ran his rum-running operation like a Fortune 500 company, staffing different departments like distribution, bribery, and intelligence. Once, when he learned icy weather had wrecked one of his shipments, Costello remarked, "Too bad I can't buy off the icebergs." Only 34 years old, Costello was on his way to becoming a multimillionaire. Then the law finally cracked down. In December 1925, the New York Times announced the Coast Guard had smashed a $40 million liquor ring. 2 years later, in 1927, Costello's trial ended in a hung jury. "I hung it," Costello reportedly said. Later that year, Frank took Bobby and a friend to Laropoli, where he visited the sister who had stayed behind. Word of Costello's success in America had preceded him.
The whole town lined up. I mean, it was a very poor town. And here was this son of Laropoli coming back to make the town whole again, or rich again. And someone would come up and his sister would interpret, and she would say, "This woman, she has 4 children already, and a 5th is on the way. They have no money." He said, 3,000 lira. They want to rename the town after him, but he said, no, that'd be too much. He said it was a marvelous experience going back to the place where he was born and having the whole town indebted to him.
The boy who had left in a cooking pot had returned a wealthy man. His relatives had no idea Costello was about to play a crucial role in the rise of the American Mafia.
Organized crime operates on one supreme commandment. No one person is above the organization. The organization is always supreme.
There never was anything subtle about the way a mob performed a hit. Hits were meant to send messages.
They're never done accidentally. They're never done solely out of revenge. They're never done for any casual reason.
It's business. Nothing personal. Strictly business.
By the late 1920s, bootlegging had made Frank Costello rich. His money-making ability earned him respect from other mobsters, but it was as a peacemaker that transformed Costello into an underworld leader. He made his debut as a mafia diplomat at a major gathering of gangsters in Atlantic City in 1929. Costello had called them together for a specific reason. Just 3 months earlier, Al Capone's hitmen, disguised as Chicago police officers, had lined up members of a rival gang and mowed them down. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre had put the mob on the front page of newspapers across the country and provoked public outrage. Just the kind of thing gangsters wanted to avoid. It was Costello who delivered that message to Capone, politely but forcefully, telling Scarface he should go to jail until things cooled down. "Tell me when I'm supposed to laugh," Big Al replied. But he heeded Costello and arranged his own arrest on a minor gun charge. Costello's wisdom at the Atlantic City Convention earned him the sobriquet Prime Minister of the Underworld.
When he wanted to cause conflict, he could pit powerful enemies against each other, yet not be in the battle. When he wanted to end conflict, he could bring bitter enemies together as the mediator. And when he wanted to accomplish something, he could bring everyone together and convince them that it was in all of their interests and get big things done.
Costello's ability to get big things done soon extended to the upper world as well. When Arnold Rothstein was killed over a card game in November 1928, Costello inherited his political connections at Tammany Hall. Costello now became the bridge between the under and upper worlds. Costello's friend, Charlie Lucky Luciano, admired Frank's diplomatic skills. Frank became one of Lucky's most trusted advisors when Luciano organized a National Crime Commission in 1931. Lucky also set up his own crime family, with Costello as a senior aide. Though Frank played a crucial role in the newly organized mafia, he had his own money-making enterprise, which he kept separate: gambling. Costello and a partner put a slot machine in every candy store, small bar, and grocery store in the New York area, 5,000 in all. Costello also took over Rothstein's bookmaking empire. The bookie operation and slot machines were illegal, but the Prime Minister knew how to get around that formality.
What he needed was political protection. Tammany Hall, through its control of judges and the police, was able to give him that protection. What was Costello able to give Tammany Hall? In one word, money.
We got handed our envelope every month, what we used to call a pad. You know, guaranteed them life, liberty, and freedom.
Costello's influence rose above the police rank and file. Something made clear at the 1932 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. There, Costello shared a suite at the Drake Hotel with the leader of Tammany Hall, Jimmy Hines.
Can you imagine a gangland leader going to a presidential convention and sharing a suite of rooms with one of the most important political leaders in New York City? That was a sign of how close Costello was to the political establishment.
Hines introduced Costello to presidential nominee Franklin Roosevelt as a prominent New York businessman and major campaign contributor. The mob was hedging its political bets. While Costello and Hines were backing Roosevelt, Lucky Luciano was in another hotel suite, stumping for FDR's rival, Al Smith. When Jimmy Hines found out and complained to Costello, the Prime Minister calmly responded, "I never heard you complain about your salary."
That's how he had politicians and judges and district leaders who had police chiefs and cops and detectives. That's how he had the whole town in his pocket.
In very rare cases, Costello came across someone he could not corrupt. In 1934, crusading New York mayor Fiorello LaGuardia declared war on Costello's slot machines.
Let the gamblers, tin horns, racketeers, and gangsters take notice that they have to keep away from New York from now on.
It was a major economic blow to the self-proclaimed king of slots, until a Louisiana senator named Huey Long offered help. Costello had met the Louisiana Kingfish during a party at Frank's Long Island Country Club. Long was drunk.
Huey was in the men's room, and the only urinal was being used. So he try to fly between the guy's legs. His aim was not too good. They started to beat up on him pretty good.
Summoned by a bathroom attendant, Costello saved the senator in the nick of time. The two eventually became friends.